Today on Commander Replay, we try out Lord Windgrace against Bird Tribal, Kambal, and Vial Smasher Thrasios. Find out who wins next on Commander Replay. Hey guys, I want to take a quick second to thank my awesome Patreon supporters. We have a new Patreon supporter in Tad Chapman. Tad, you are awesome. If you guys want to help support the channel and vote on which decks I play next, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below. So today's video comes as voted on by Patreon supporters, with Lord Windgrace taking down 44% of the vote. Welcome back everyone, playing some Lord Windgrace. Kept an opening hand that looks like this. We have a bunch of lands, a Liege of the Tangle, spicy little inclusion, Ramunap Excavator, and a Prismatic Omen. Today I am joined by two Patreon supporters, and first up is Firemaker282 piloting this Kangee Aerie Keeper deck, and they're off to a pretty good start with turn 1 Soul Ring, Azorius Signet, and a Cavern of Souls naming birds. They told me a little bit about this deck the other day. It is a bird tribal deck, and apparently they've been having pretty good success with it, so something we'll need to watch out for. And that'll bring it to our turn 1. Let's drop down this Colony Garden, get that nice little chump blocking token out, and also the land comes in tapped, so obviously it makes sense to get down on turn 1. Here comes some boots for the bird opponent. So this particular version of Lord Windgrace is a fairly standard build of Lord Windgrace. It's a Lands Matters deck. This deck list is very, very similar to the deck list that Jumbo Commander built. I changed only a few cards from his deck lists, and the reason for that is that I think one of my most hated cards right now is Splendid Reclamation, and Lord Windgrace is basically Splendid Reclamation.deck. So this commander was a thing that I just didn't really want to see more of, which is like fairly uninteractive. Dump a bunch of lands in the graveyard, get them back into play somehow, and make oodles of mana and just win the game. Totally cool if you guys like it, it's just not my particular brand of commander. So I didn't spend tons and tons of time trying to build this particular version of the deck, but I know that a lot of you still want to see just a standard build of Lord Windgrace. However, with Game 2 of Lord Windgrace, I have a really spicy, super janky version of Lord Windgrace that is much more suited to what I like to do. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that one, because that one's going to be a lot of fun. Continuing on our opponents, second up we have Chaotix 2075 piloting this Kambal Console of Allocation deck. Interesting commander, one that I've run into. It was a very popular commander choice for a year or two surrounding the release of Aether Revolt. So opponent's going to lay down a Thaumatic Compass. Nice. Actually a card that I think is pretty solid for Lord Windgrace because it shouldn't be too hard to get it flipped over. It gives you a nice way to stop incoming attackers. And that's going to bring it back to our turn. We draw this Mending of Dominaria. A little bit awkward. Our hand's just a teeny bit slow. All right here. Do we just start pitching lands into the graveyard with the bounce land? I think we do. So play the Rakdos Carnarium, get the Colony Garden back. No attacks, obviously, with our 0-1. And we will discard a Forest. And our last opponent, by the way, is not a Patreon supporter. However, it will be playing this Vial Smasher the Fierce deck, partnered with Thrasios Triton Hero. Pretty good combination right there. Playing 4 colors, everything except white. And if I had to guess, I would say there's probably an infinite mana combo in there for Thrasios. And there's probably also some really big X spells that infinite mana would be useful for with Vial Smasher. That would be my guess on where they're probably going with this deck. So keeping their commanders out of play would probably be a very good idea. So I did make a couple changes to Jumbo Commander's version of the deck. One of the things that I added was this Liege of the Tangle, just because this is a really fun card that I've been wanting to use for a long time, so this seemed like a good home for it. I also added a touch more removal. Jumbo Commander's deck list was really light on removal, especially considering that it's Jund colors, which is, you have some really good removal options when you're in Jund, so I did find that just a little bit odd with their particular version of the deck, but I'm not sure what power level he was trying to build this deck to. Though it looks like it's probably fairly strong, being that there's a lot of big X spells at the top. So we draw into a Firelit Thicket. Right here, let's get down, let's just play the Forest and get down the Ramunap Excavator. It'll give us a nice little blocker, so we can think about getting our commander in fairly soon. Here comes Gustcloak Savior. It is a 5-mana 3/4 flying. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may untap that creature and remove it from combat. Interesting. That's pretty cool, actually. Opponent's going to put the boots on it and swing into us. Sure. Opponent says, caw, caw. It's my bird noise. Opponent's going to use the Thaumatic Compass, get themselves a land, and drop down a land tax. Very nice. Fellwar Stone coming down for the 4-color opponent. So one thing that I think we'll probably end up seeing with this bird deck, I think we'll probably get a good feel on just how good flying is in Commander. Like, Most of the bird creatures that I'm aware of aren't particularly impressive, given their stat size, especially since most of them are pretty old. Since a lot of them were printed 15 years ago, they don't have the same stats that a lot of modern creatures have. However, just the fact that they're flying and evasive, I think that still means that they're going to put a pretty good hurting on things. Flying in Commander is really underrated ability, I think. And we're going to find out just how painful it is to be on a ground-based plan of attack against a bunch of flyers, I think is where this game is heading. Anyway, that's going to bring it back to our turn. We draw an Eternal Witness. We'll probably hang on to that for just a moment. I'm thinking about just going with the tap land again. It seems like it probably makes the most sense. Do we play the land out of the graveyard? I'm probably just going to leave the land in the graveyard so we can try to set up Lord Windgrace's ability. So yeah, let's get the tap land and get another token. Opponent did cast their Vial Smasher last turn, by the way. And then we'll play the Prismatic Omen. And next turn we're going to look at getting Lord Windgrace into play. Our 2/3 stops Vial Smasher from attacking into us, so as much as I like attacking right here, I'm probably just going to stay put. This doesn't really seem like a deck that wants to just turn creatures sideways every turn. Murmuring Mystic coming down for our opponent. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 blue bird illusion creature token with flying. Interesting. Opponent moves the boots over to that. Opponent sitting on 2 mana. I hope that's not a negate. It'll be pretty awkward for our commander if it is. Forerunner of the Legion coming down for the Kambal opponent. Enters the battlefield, search your library for a vampire card, reveal it, shuffle your library, and then put that card on top of it. It's going to be a Vampire Nighthawk. Yeah, that seems like a great call against a bird opponent. Also just a great card in general. Really good blocker. So many times I lay down a Vampire Nighthawk in like Shieldred or something like that, and people just stop attacking you. They don't feel like dealing with the Death Touch. One of my favorite things to do with it was put Nightmare Lash or Lash Writhe on top of it and, turn into like an 8/9 flying or something like that with lifelink, so you gain a bunch of life back, which is very relevant in a black deck. So Nature's Lore for the Vial Smasher opponent. I didn't see who got hit with it. Must have been the Kambal opponent. Ooh, here comes a Training Grounds. I hear that's pretty good with Thrasios. Oh, and that's going to get Swan Songed. Bird opponent's going to play a Swan Song. Interestingly, very on flavor in that Swan Song creates a 2/2 bird, just that it's for the opponent. So flavor win right there. And a Nivix Guildmage coming down. Yep. Ooh, we draw into a Gitrog monster, huh? Given that there's kind of a lot of flyers out, yeah, there's kind of a lot of flyers on board. I don't know that Lord Windgrace is exactly the thing that we want right here. So I'm thinking it's actually going to be the Gitrog. So play the Gitrog, play an additional land. No real attacks to make, so we will pass the turn. Also, the Gitrog gives us something that we can attack with, which I think will be probably at least a little bit relevant. I don't want to put like 0 pressure on all of our opponents. Hedron Archive coming down for the bird opponent. So opponent going to send their big bird into us and the small bird into the Kambal opponent. Sure. Land tax is going to trigger for the Kambal opponent. Here comes that Vampire Nighthawk. And Forerunner of the Legion also says, whenever a vampire enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Here comes Kambal, Console of Allocation. I think that can actually be pretty good against Thrasios. It puts sort of a limit on the number of things that they can play. I mean, right now that limit is still really high since they're at 38 life. But they would have to, theoretically, they would have to be very careful if they tried to just play their entire deck. So Thrasios coming into play. Vial Smasher is going to get someone for 2. Looks like it got us. That is unfortunate. Here comes a Lenoir Elves. So Gitrog monster is going to trigger. So we have to sacrifice a land, sacrifice the Firelit Thicket, and we'll get to draw an additional card because of that. We find a Temp with Discovery and a Harrow. Yeah, those are all very good cards. So we got some choices right here. We've got Lord Windgrace as an option, which I think will probably be pretty good. Although we don't have a land in hand to discard, so maybe that's not the best. But we could minus it and get 2 lands, which is always really cool. Temp with Discovery brings lands into play untapped, so that's probably, yeah. I think that's the one. So we're going to play the Temp with Discovery. Kambal's going to trigger. And let's see who's feeling tempted. Maybe I should have played the Harrow instead. Opponent says he knows the dangers of taking the offer, but it's just so tempting. Yeah, it really is. All right, so we get a land. No Ancient Tomb in this deck. Oh, yeah, we can get Cabal Coffers. Sweet. The Prismatic Omen makes all of our cards every land type, so Cabal Coffer is going to be sweet right here. All right, we got one. It's going to be a Windbrisk Kites. Nice. Good card, also very flavorful for this particular deck. One that I played a lot in Standard. Opponent's going to get the Hideaway. We get to search for another land. Excellent. So, right here, I'm going to go for this Overgrown Tomb. We get to search for another land. Strip Mine, maybe? Strip Mine seems helpful to have around. Don't think we need to pay the life right here. We have a lot of green mana costs in our hand. So right now, at this exact second, the additional black mana off Kambal coffers I don't think is going to do that much for us, but next turn it should be pretty good. Ooh, also a Kambal coffers for the Vial Smasher Thrasios opponent. I don't think there's an Urborg in play yet. There is not. So they actually have 0 swamps in play, so Kambal coffers doing a lot of nothing for them. So then we're going to play the Harrow. We need to sacrifice a land. I guess we'll sacrifice the Kangee Garden. It's going to trigger a Kambal again. That'll also trigger the Gitrog monster. We draw a Sylvan Safekeeper. It'll be helpful next turn, I think. Those are red. We have 1 red source, 2 red source, 2 red sources. Honestly, I think we just need... We have the Prismatic Omen down, but if it gets blown up for some reason, I want to make sure that we have our mana covered. Yeah, I think just green right here. Actually, we'll go green and black, since our win conditions are generally going to be the big black X spells. Maybe we should have played... Well, yeah, I don't think it matters too much, but... I guess we should have brought that in untapped. Could have did a little bit more. I forgot that Harrow brings the lands in untapped. So I guess we just play the Sylvan Safekeeper. I'm actually going to swing into the Vial Smasher opponent with the Gitrog. The Gitrog's really good, but we do have ways to get it back. And if they wanted to, like, quadruple block, I'm fine with that. I doubt that they will, but I think I'm actually going to use the Sylvan Safekeeper one time. Sacrifice a mountain. Because I think we only played 1 land this turn. So ideally, I'd like to catch another one. And, yep, there's a second land. Sweet. So play that land. I should have played a land from... Oh, we can still play a land from our graveyard. So play a land from our graveyard. Nice. It's been a pretty good little turn right there. We are getting set up. So opponent takes that hit, by the way, just goes down to 32. And the reason I wanted to do that is because there's a Kambal at the table, because there's a bunch of flying creatures at the table, I don't want them to just be at 40. I mean, with Kambal in play, that means what? Potentially 3 less spells that they could have played if they go infinite for some reason. So, you know. I'm sure their plans would have something to deal with Kambal, but, you know, just in case they don't. Opponent going to send the 1/1 into us. Sure. Going on the attack. Going to hit the Vial Smasher for 3. Opponent runs the 1/1 into the Vampire Nighthawk, so that's probably not the... Oh, yep, got the Gust Cloak Savior, so we'll be able to untap his bird and remove it from combat. Seems pretty good. Yeah, it's a cool little trick. Opponent's going to use their Thrasios one time. They revealed... Ooh, Mana Drain. Gross. Opponent's going to activate... Ooh, yeah, going to activate the Windgrace Kites. Let's see what it is. A Maria Angel. Very nice. Opponent's got all the birds working. So far, I'm impressed. If they drop their commander down next turn, all those birds are going to get +1/+1. Seems pretty good. Oh, no, it's actually so... taking a look at Kangee, by the way. It's 2 white blue for a 2/2 with flying. It has kicker X2. When it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, put X feather counters on it. Other bird creatures get +1/+1 for each feather counter on Kangee Aerie Keeper. Oh, so we can make his birds huge. Yeah. It's a lot better than I initially thought. So now that he's got a couple flyers... Start making those things like 5/5, 6/6s. That's a lot of damage. Sword of the Animus coming down for the Kambal opponent. And a Legion Lieutenant. So it looks like opponent might have like a vampire theme going on with this Kambal deck. Kind of an interesting way to take it. The Kambal decks that I've seen a lot of, which is just the like try to slowly whittle your opponents down with Kambal triggers and other life loss triggers, I haven't really seen them have a lot of success. So in my opinion, going the vampire direction, probably a better idea. You get a little bit of life loss from Kambal, and then you got some creatures you can attack with. Really get people's life totals nice and low, or take them out of the game. Just sitting back and waiting on Kambal I never found to be super effective, at least in the games that I played against it. Opponent's going to put Sword of the Animist on this Vampire Nighthawk, and with the Legion Lieutenant down, Vampire Nighthawk is a 5/6 flyer, so opponent primed to gain some life back if they want to do some attacking. Going to swing into the bird opponent and trigger the Sword of the Animist. Yep. Ooh, so opponent lays down a Cyclonic Rift. Everything getting bounced. Now, the good thing with that is that I was feeling that removal was probably needed for the Thrasios Vial Smasher opponent because they were starting to become very set up. Opponent does discard a Dread from their hand. Dread will get shuffled from their graveyard into their library. Dread is a fun card. I've always really liked Dread. I've always found Dread to be a really interesting card. It's a card that I liked way back when it was in Standard. I tried to make it work a couple times. It's interesting in Commander because the problem with it is that even if that thing triggers, you still lose a lot of life. And in a mono black deck, you're probably burning a lot of your life on card draw. So you need to have a way to gain some life back to make it really effective. And also with mono black, like I play Shieldred. Shieldred was the deck that I primarily played a lot of, which doesn't make great use of Dread since it doesn't stay in your graveyard and get shuffled away. But in a non-reanimator mono black deck, I don't know if there is such thing, but if there is, Dread would probably be a pretty good home in that. So Thrasios back to play. For some reason, opponent's Kambal went to the graveyard instead of the command zone. Not sure what's going on there. Ooh, Noxious Revival on the training ground. Gross. And Vial Smasher coming back to play. Also gross. Natural Affinity. All lands become 2/2 creatures until end of turn. They're still lands. How many lands do we have? We have 9 lands. That doesn't kill anyone, unfortunately, so I think we're probably going to hold on to that. I think the card I actually want is Liege of the Tangle. There seems to be not a lot of removal floating around this game, so if we just turn a few lands into big creatures, I feel like that might be enough. Or do we want more like Gitrog, Sylvan Safekeeper action? I think we probably do. Actually, so first things first, let's get Prismatic Omen back down. Oh yeah, with the Kambal coffers, we should be able to make much more mana. So we have 9 black mana. Awesome. Let's get the Gitrog back to play. Still enough to get the Liege of the Tangle down, but I think I want to get the Ramunap Excavator right here. Let's get the Forest, get the Firelit Thicket. So now we've got kind of a lot of lands going. That'll give us enough for Lord Windgrace. Or we could still get the Liege of the Tangle down. I like Liege of the Tangle. So we have significantly increased our land count that turn. Feeling good about what we can do next turn, although I am worried about the Vial Smasher Thrasios opponent. Distant Melody, choose a creature type. Draw a card for each permanent you control of that type. Opponent draws a bunch of cards. They do have a lot of birds. I think they had about 4 at the time that they cast that spell. Ooh, Leyline of Anticipation coming down for the bird opponent. They can do everything at instant speed. Looks like they've only got 3 mana left, so probably nothing too crazy with 3 mana, but next turn they'll be set up to wait to the last possible moment to play anything they want to play. Man, if they end-step their commander, yeah, end-stepping their commander seems pretty good. Opponent sends all the birds into the Kambal opponent. They go back down to 31. Here's a Vanquisher's banner for the Vampire opponent. Choosing Vampire, of course. It says choose birds. I think that's only creatures you control, right? Creatures you control, and whenever you cast it, yep. Bishop of Binding. Enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls. Until Bishop of Binding leaves the battlefield, target vampire gets +X/+X until end of turn. Whenever it attacks, target vampire gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the power of the exiled card. Oh, goes after our Liege of the Tangle. Boo. Had plans for that thing. That's an 8 mana play getting washed away. Although, if that thing dies for any reason, we will get it back. So, it's been a very removal-light game so far, but should someone find their way into a board wipe, we'll be left with a nice big 8/8, so that would be cool. Like I said, Jumbo Commander's deck list was really light on removal, especially considering the colors. And I know that there's a million things that synergize with land decks now, so it does become really difficult to pare down exactly what you want in the deck, because there's so many good ramp cards. There's so many cards that interact with lands in the graveyard now that it is really difficult to select every card you want and every card you don't. Trading Ground coming down for our opponent. Yep, so they're probably going to get busy with that Thrasios. Not great. And that brings it back to our turn. We get a Gitrog trigger on our upkeep. Opponent's going to Thrasios one time. Revealed a Summer Bloom. Going to Thrasios again. Reveals Elves of Deep Shadow. Interesting. So we're going to sacrifice the land. We're going to sacrifice a mountain. So that'll give us an extra card draw. We draw 2 lands. Not exactly what I was hoping for. We have 10 lands. If we played Natural Affinity, we'd have 7 lands that we could attack with. That's 14. Not enough to kill anyone. I am worried, though, about the possibility of end-step Kangee next turn. So I'm thinking that we probably need to be, set up to win the game. We need to set up this turn to win the game next turn. I don't know that we're going to have more time than that. So let's get... I think Lord Windgrace, getting that in is going to be a good idea. So Lord Windgrace in. Kind of want to just look at some extra cards at this moment. Oh, opponent's got that mana drain. Yep, here comes the mana drain. Someone's about to eat 2 damage. So Lord Windgrace back to the command zone. I think I still just want Lord Windgrace, though. So we have the mana to recast it, so I guess we're going to do that. Does significantly limit the number of things we can do this turn, though. We're going to use that plus ability. We'll discard the Gruul Turf, I guess. We get a Forgotten Cave and a Demonic Tutor. Ooh, Demonic Tutor is interesting. Also, we get to draw an additional card with the Gitrog monster. Yeah, that seems pretty good. There's an Urborg. I actually don't really want to play that because of opponent's Kambal coffers, and we're still able to make use of ours, so we're going to hold on to that for a little while. I think I want to go Demonic Tutor into a Toxic Deluge. Do we have any land plays left? That should actually be enough. So make a black. Get Toxic Deluge. We do need to play it before combat because I would prefer to attack with the Gitrog first, but we're going to lose the mana that we need to play it. So we are going to pay 5, and that will kill everything except our Gitrog monster. Oh, and hey, that'll bring back our Liege of the Tangle. Even better. Nice. So we still have 2 land plays remaining. Awesome. Play this Forest. Cycle this Forgotten Cave. So we'll actually get to draw 2 cards because of the Gitrog. There's a Crucible of Worlds. Helpful. We draw a Valakut. I don't know why DJ put this one in here. There's not a ton of mountains in this deck, so... But I guess we lay down the Volakut. Oh, Prismatic Omen is why he put it in here. All right. So in that case, shoot the Vial Smasher opponent. We can now attack them for 1. Use the Volakut ability. Lay down this Sylvan Safekeeper. Opponent's going to lay down a Shared Triumph at infant speed. Cool. Ding the Vial Smasher for 1. And pass a turn like that. Pretty good turn right there, even though our commander got countered the first time, which was pretty annoying. Still able to generate a lot of mana from the Prismatic Omen and the Kambal coffers. Gilded Lotus coming down for the bird opponent. Land tax trigger for the Kambal opponent. Forerunner of the Legion coming back to play. Will trigger the Vanquisher's banner. Does not sequence itself properly, though, where you get to draw the card that you tutor for, since the draw happens before the tutor happens. Vampire Nighthawk coming back to play. That'll trigger the Forerunner of the Legion. Erebos God of the Dead coming into play, so life gain off the table. And brings it to the 4-color opponent's turn. They will get the Mana Drain trigger for 5 mana. Yeah, that's pretty good. 1,000-Year Storm. Uh-oh. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you copy it for each other instant and sorcery spell you've cast this turn. Oh, boy. There's a Worldly Tutor. 0 copies. Regrowth. Opponent's going to target Read the Bones. Okay. Okay, 2 copies of Regrowth. Don't get the Mana Drain. What was the other one they got? Okay, so they went for the Nature's Lore. They're going to get a bunch of copies of Nature's Lore. Does that bring them in untapped? Yeah, that brings them in untapped. That's not good. This opponent gets 2 Swamps in Overgrown Tomb and Bayou. Trying to get some use out of the Kambal coffers, which they haven't really been able to make use of yet. Also gets a Breeding Pool. Yeah, it's a good thing we played that board wipe last turn. We'd be in some real trouble if we didn't. And opponent's going to play Read the Bones. I'm actually okay with the life loss on that. I don't think that they'll be able to win the game with 1 mana. I guess they could hit Mana Rocks, though. Opponent goes down to 11, which means if we play 4 lands, Volakut will kill them. Opponent plays a land. Oh, looks like they're going to have enough to activate the Kambal coffers. All black mana, though. Oh, opponent's going to play a Summer Bloom. So, I mean, they can play every land in their hand. Okay. Hopefully there's not too many lands in their hand. Got 1. Play a Sylvan Scrying. It's not great. Oh, that's going to get them 6 copies. That's bad. That is bad. Oh, opponent finally getting that Urborg, so they'll be able to make more mana with the Kambal coffers. Yeah. Opponent getting more lands. Oh, opponent's going to draw so many cards. Scry. A lot. Ugh. So this is the situation of sitting at the wrong spot on the turn order. Opponent going before us. If we were just able to untap, we could easily blow them up with this Volakut and the creatures we have in play. And this is also where having Kambal in play would have been really good because, like I said, it limits the number of spells that opponent would have been able to play. So I kind of wish Kambal was still around. And that's the problem with Kambal decks is that Kambal usually just gets swept away in a board wipe somewhere. And it's not really worth the 5 mana to recast it after that, is one of the problems that I've noticed. But it would prevent opponent from being able to do all this nonsense. Here comes an Explorer with 7 copies. Ugh. I don't know. I think opponent's probably getting to the point where they can't whiff. I mean, even a Lightning Bolt at this point would probably kill several players. Oh, yeah. Kambal also going to the graveyard means they didn't have access to recast it because they would have been able to stop all this. Ugh. I mean, the one hope right here is we just have to hope that opponent runs out of mana. Nope. There's a Manamorphose copied 8 times, so that doesn't look like that's going to be the case. That's a Gutter Snipe coming into play. Yeah, so, I mean, opponent can kill us with just about anything at this point. I don't know if the copies trigger Gutter Snipe, but either way, I'm assuming that they can play so many things that... There's a Demonic Tutor, so now they'll be able to get exactly... I mean, there's 36 cards left in their deck, but they'll be able to get exactly the cards they need to finish this out. Opponent's going to Supreme Verdict. Didn't catch it in time to sack any lands, but Demonic Tutor will still trigger 8 times, 9 times. I mean, if they cast any Storm spell, they win. Howl of the Horde. Whenever you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets. Yeah, I mean, any spell at this point. So opponent living up to the very definition of uninteractive combo. And there's an Exsanguinate for about $1 million. So yeah, we just weren't able to untap right there. We could have taken the Thrasio opponent out, which was definitely going to be my plan, and then we would have been left with the other 2 opponents. Don't know exactly how we would have navigated them, but we would have looked for some things. So Thrasios, Vial Smasher taking it down. Pretty annoyed. Very annoying set of commanders. Thrasios easily the strongest commander out of Commander 16. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this Lord Windgrace video. As always, feel free to comment, like, or subscribe. Thank you for watching.